Well, happy Nick Saban Day, folks. Second day of SEC Media Days upon us. Just inside 7 weeks before the start of the season opener. Alabama session, one of 4 today. Nick Saban joined by incredible trio, Will Anderson, Jordan Battle, and of course the reigning Heisman winner in Bryce Young. Crimson Tide, as of today, the betting favorite to win the national title. Caesars coming in at plus 180, ahead of Ohio State and rival Georgia coming in at plus 375 and 4-1 respectively. Just taking a look at Alabama the past 5 seasons, you see they are no stranger to getting to the title game. Wins in 17 and 20, been balanced out by losses in 18, of course, last year to the Dogs. And also Bryce Young looking to go back-to-back, going Heisman twice. Archie Griffith, the only other player, of course, to do that in history. All right, we've got guys at SEC Media Days, Josh Pate and Barrett Sallee joining us here. Gents, so it's Nick Saban Day, it's Alabama. What are you guys specifically looking out for where you are?
Yeah, you feel it when you wake up here.
Yep.
Barrett, I think we both can attest to that. What's interesting is you got Nick Saban rolling in, and there's always a fair amount of talk with him as if he were already the commissioner of the sport. And this year, never more so. And you just mentioned there, you've got the Heisman winner. You're coming off a loss in the national championship game. And yet I would say if we were betting odds on here, I would say like 80-20. His question rate today will be off field, maybe not even fully Alabama related.
Yeah, I think off the field, not only with the administrative stuff, because Nick Saban knows when he opens his mouth, it matters more than Clark Lee or Mike Leach or whoever else. But obviously the Jimbo Fisher thing from earlier this offseason will be discussed. I don't necessarily care all that much. I don't think Josh does either. But I think on the field, an angry Alabama is always something to keep an eye on. Losing the national championship game last year to Georgia, sour taste in their mouth. And yes, Bryce Young is there, but the best player in college football is also here in Will Anderson Jr. And when you have the top 2 players in the entire sport coming through in one day, we're pretty excited to talk to them.
Guys, what I mentioned, Archie Griffith, we know that it's hard. Voters like the new feel, and so winning 2 Heismans, especially back-to-back, can certainly be tough. But when we take a look at Bryce Young, how do we anticipate he's going to handle a season which expectations continue to be high? And then hopefully, of course, that offensive line will be a little bit better than it was for him last year.
Barrett, I've been around him a couple of times since then. We'll be around him today. I don't get the sense he cares at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, he kind of, if you were to take Nick Saban but embody him in an 18 or 19-year-old guy, that's kind of how Bryce Young has carried himself. But he sounded like that in high school, out at Mater Dei. And he's also got the recent memory of that Iron Bowl where Alabama struggled to score until the very end of the game. And, you know, the national championship game where later in the game when you lose a couple of key offensive weapons, they can't get it done. So even though Alabama won the SEC last year, and in a lot of ways Bryce Young validated himself forever as a Heisman Trophy winner, as crazy as it sounds, judging by the Alabama curve, I think they walk in here and walk into the season feel like they still got a lot to prove.
Absolutely they do. And you mentioned the offensive line. I mean, it was so bad last year that you and I could have probably started for it. Now, you obviously are built a little bit better than I am for that, but it was horrendous. And the fact that he won the Heisman Trophy behind that line is a miracle. So even if it gets a little bit better this year, you're talking about a guy in Bryce Young, assuming he doesn't split votes with Will Anderson Jr., which some voters care about voting 2 players on the same team on their ballots, then I think he could be the second player to win the Heisman Trophy twice, along with Archie Griffin. I think all he needs is a little help up front. He'll take care of the rest.
Gents, we have, of course, Nick Saban highlighting today, Kirby Smart highlighting the group tomorrow. Where do we stand in terms of the Alabama-Georgia rivalry, given, of course, what we witnessed in the national title game and then all the buzz around SEC Media Days this year?
I think it's Bama-LSU, Barrett. I think it was last decade, Bama-LSU. Bama was always, or normally always, on the plus side of that equation. And so you never saw Bama-LSU, obviously, for an SEC title, or only once for a national title, only once. But we've already seen Georgia and Alabama play twice for a national championship. They can play every year in the SEC championship. You've got the former protege there at Georgia in Kirby Smart, but everybody knows that. What you don't get to see, but what we sort of have our ear to the ground for every day, is the recruiting battles. You know, these states border each other. I grew up right on the Chattahoochee River, so I've got 1 foot in each state, essentially. And for a long time, this was kind of a Cold War of sorts, in that neither of the fan bases liked each other, but they never played routinely enough for it to matter. Well, now they do. And even though they're not on each other's schedule this year, is there any more a virtual inevitability, at least in terms of feel in the preseason, than, yeah, these two will be in this very city a couple of blocks away a few months from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rivalry with what Georgia did last year in the national championship game, it changed the dynamic because, yes, they're different states. They're border states. It is a passive-aggressive war up until what we saw in Indianapolis. And now they're not little brother anymore to Alabama. They're cousins. They are right next door because, look, you go back, the Derrick Henry game in 2015, the blowout in Athens, the national title game here in Atlanta a few years back, the SEC championship game right after that. It was almost like Alabama patted Georgia on the head. Nice game, good try, we'll see you later. Now I think Alabama will look at Georgia and think, okay, they've elevated themselves to the point where they are on the brink of a dynasty as well, with Nick Saban retiring sometime within the next 4 or 5 years. So they're a threat. They're a threat not only to Alabama this year, but I think they're a threat to the Alabama program moving forward because now Kirby has the confidence not only to win a national championship, but to continue that recruiting that has been so instrumental in him achieving that goal.
Guys, our time is running out, but before I let you go quickly here, of the other three coaches, who are you most looking forward to talking to and speaking with today?
I want to hear from Shane Beamer. You know, it's an interesting, kind of off the radar from a national perspective program in South Carolina, but internally over there, they're really excited. Yep. They got their guy. It's like Sam Pittman in Arkansas. They got their guy. They're hoping to be that SEC Eastern Division equivalent of Arkansas, and boy, this season's vitally important for them.
Yeah, this time last year, Spencer Rattler was the Heisman Trophy favorite. Now he's playing for South Carolina, so want to hear about that recruiting effort from Shane Beamer. And the last time we saw Beamer, he was getting mayonnaise poured on his head at the Duke's Mayo Bowl, so we certainly have to ask him about his favorite condiment as well.
No doubt. Barrett, Josh, certainly appreciate it. Guys are going to be there all week, of course, SEC Media Days in Atlanta. I want to remind you about the Cover 3 podcast, where in the latest pod, they're talking about win totals, specifically the Big 12. The Cover 3 crew breaking that down. Win totals for Oklahoma, OK State, and more. Just part one of a multi-part series.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.